Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And as someone who grew up watching South Park and Family Guy, I have a soft spot for crude humor. I don't deny it, I find jokes about dicks, poop, boobs, and buttholes hilarious. I know it's not the most refined form of comedy, but it's still funny. And nobody should feel bad for laughing at it. Even in an era of safe spaces, snowflakes, and political correctness, we should all enjoy a good fart joke. In fact, I believe the world needs more humor like that. Everything, including comedy, has just become so serious. Even South Park has become excessively political at times. And that's exactly why I'm so fond of Paradise PD, an animated show on Netflix that's both crude and unapologetically raunchy. It comes courtesy of Roger Black and Waco Ojin, the twisted minds behind Brickleberry, another show that was overtly obscene. But that show was on Comedy Central. It still had to abide by the same cable standards as South Park. That means there were lines they couldn't cross. Well, on Netflix, Paradise PD doesn't just cross those lines, it effectively shits all over them while doing meth and waving their dick at them. This show drops F-bombs. This show has graphic, unblurred visions of buttholes, penises, and breasts. This show has an excessive amount of poop-based humor. Now, I don't deny that's not for everyone. But if you have any appreciation for that kind of comedy, Paradise PD delivers that in all its uncensored glory. Having grown up hearing so many bleeps and seeing so many censor bars, I honestly find that refreshing, even when it is objectively disgusting. But Paradise PD isn't all about gratuitous dick and poop jokes. Yes, they are the main ingredient, but there are other qualities to the show. Qualities that make it more than a glorified Brickleberry rebrand, despite that being a running gag at one point. There are a number of overarching arcs in this show. Not every episode is entirely self-contained, and not every character remains static through each season. There is an effort to tell a larger story here. And granted, that story is crude, raunchy, and fucked up at times, but there's still merit to that story. And after season 3, there's even some real honest heart. So if you have a good sense of humor and a strong stomach, and a certain comfort level with poop and dick jokes, I'd like to offer my overall assessment of Paradise PD. There will be spoilers and dirty jokes. Very, very dirty jokes. But there will also be insights that I hope highlight the true worth of this show. Let's get one detail out of the way. The characters in Paradise PD are fucked up even by adult animation standards. They're all a bunch of eccentric, ignorant perverts who put themselves in crazy situations just by being who they are. Kevin is a whiny, gullible beta male who finds a way to be inept at everything that doesn't involve Dungeons and Dragons. His father is an angry, insecure police chief who has an unhealthy obsession with buttholes. And Kevin's mother, Karen, isn't exactly a good counterbalance. But like Randall, she's insecure, conniving, and has a weird obsession with balls. Now they may be the main cast, but believe me, they are far from the most perverse characters on this show. You've got Dusty Marlowe, a morbidly obese cat lover who's laughably ignorant and disturbingly obsessive at times. You've got Gina Grabowski, an impulsive, unstable, rageaholic woman with an extreme fetish for fat men, one that is actually a result of a bullet in her brain. But that's a long, messy story. You've got Stanley Hobson, a senile old man with an extreme proclivity for anything shaped like a penis. You've got Gerald Fitzgerald, Paradise PD's only black cop. He's somewhat stable, if by stable I mean having a split personality for 2 seasons and marrying a dolphin at one point. You've got Bullet the Talking Dog, a hardcore drug addict who will do and take anything to get high. He's basically a more self-aware version of Brian Griffin from Family Guy, and honestly, he's more likable because of that. No matter how you describe them, these characters are not stable, well-adjusted individuals. They're also not very moral or respectable most of the time. They'll do the wrong thing for the wrong reason as much as they'll do the right thing for the wrong reason. Not all of it is out of pure malice or narcissism either. Many of them are just idiots with piss-poor judgment and next to no self-awareness. And when it comes to taking responsibility or facing consequences, they'll only ever do it as a last resort. Now on paper, these characters seem deplorable and irredeemable. And yet, the show finds a way to still make them likable. Some of them do have honest, sincere motivations. Some are just funny. Watching Gina kick ass or Fitz play the piccolo is just plain hilarious. Also, some characters are more inherently likable than others. Kevin is probably the most sincere, relatively speaking, which isn't saying much, I know. He wants nothing more than to be a cop just like his dad, and he wants to make his parents proud. His primary obstacle is that he's weak, unskilled, and the first time he handled a gun, he shot his dad's balls off. Yeah, that happened in the first 5 minutes of the first episode. If nothing else, it tells you just what kind of show you're in for. And some characters take longer to develop. Both Gina and Fitz gain greater depth in later seasons. Their behavior is still extreme, but there's also a context given to it. Gina comes from a terrible family, and Fitz was traumatized in his previous job. Even Bullet's drug use gets some background when we find out what happened to him as a puppy. At multiple points throughout this show, these characters carry themselves in a way that's actually endearing. And again, for all the disgusting, perverted things they do, it's rarely out of pure malice. It all comes back to them just being idiots with poor impulse control. That's the fuel for all the wild antics throughout this show. And as obscene as they can be, they're still funny and entertaining. And it also helps that the larger world of Paradise PD does plenty to fuel that obscenity. As deranged as the characters in Paradise PD can be, the world around them is every bit as fucked up. Despite its name, the city of Paradise is less than ideal, to say the least. This isn't some quaint city in the heartland of America. It's basically America's wart-laden butthole. It's populated by a colorful cast of deviants, drug addicts, drug dealers, and dolphin fuckers. I swear, I'm not making that last one up. Most people are dumb, gullible, and poor, and anyone with even the slightest bit of wealth and influence gets immediately corrupted. It happens to Randall, Dusty, Fitz, and even Kevin at one point. And in later seasons, the population gets even more messed up when a nuclear blast creates a sizable portion of deformed mutants. Altogether, the setting is basically the deformed love child of Idiocracy, South Park, and Springfield from The Simpsons. On meth. This is not a setting where people can be normal. It's also not a place where you can be a good, upstanding cop either. This is a world where crazy fuels crazy. You have to be broken on some levels just to function in this world. And every character in Paradise PD does plenty to adapt. Within this setting, the show crafts a larger story that plays out over the course of several seasons. And unlike Brickleberry, the events of one episode often affect the other. Some arcs even get extended into later seasons, such as Fitz's split personality or Randall's effort to get back with Karen. It's not storytelling on the level of Breaking Bad, but it gives the show more depth, which, given its style of comedy, it definitely needs. And the American butthole that is Paradise is a constant driving force of that narrative. These are hilariously inept cops trying to police a hilariously depraved city. The results are bound to be mixed, as well as proportionally depraved. But it works because the setting matches the characters so well. They complement one another no matter how crazy things get. It's a unique dynamic, if I'm being polite about it, because crazy or not, the city needs police. In the first season, much of the story is built around a dangerous new meth epidemic. And in the second, the kingpin behind that meth epidemic attempts to take over the town, a power play that culminates in an exploding pizza. And I swear, I'm not making that up. It's actually more hilarious in context. And the third season has Paradise trying to rebuild after said pizza explosion. It's not overly complex. It's a messy, vulgar, and obscene process every step of the way. And it's also here where Paradise PD shines in unexpected ways. In the first episode of the show, it's Kevin who acts as our main point of view character. We learn through him what being a cop in Paradise is like. We also learn that he idolizes his father and wants to make him proud. These are all respectable traits, looking up to a parent and wanting to emulate them. Then Kevin accidentally shoots his dad's balls off, and no, I'm not being metaphorical, and everything after that gets messy, and ugly, and perverse. But that respectable foundation is still there. Kevin's dad, Randall, is a bitter, ballless shell of a man who no longer relates to his son, but Kevin still wants to be a cop. Even though he grows up to be weak, unskilled, and inept at so many things, that drive in him to be a cop is still present. And once he gets his chance, he makes a serious effort to be the best cop he can be. Now, he does fail way more often than he succeeds, often in spectacular fashion. But his motivations don't change. They just evolve over time. His family dynamics change too. In the first season, his parents are divorced and very bitter about it. But over the course of the show, they rekindle their relationship. It's not exactly an epic romance, but it's still genuine. Randall shows time and again that he was never over Karen. And Karen shows that she still can't shake how she feels about Randall. Now, is it a healthy relationship? Hell no. There's a lot of pegging and teabagging involved. And that's just scratching the surface. But relative to Paradise and the show, it's still functional. That really is a running theme in this show. Yes, these characters are deranged perverts in a deranged world, but they have personalities and backstories. One of the characters who evolves the most is Fitz, who went from traumatized cop to meth kingpin to family man, who married a dolphin. It was quite a journey, to say the least. But it was Gina's story that ended up being the most endearing, and that's saying a lot. In the first 2 seasons, she tries desperately to seduce Dusty, but along the way, we also learned why she's so messed up. Some of that is a result of her hillbilly meth head family, and some of it is a result of brain trauma. But it's not until season 3 that she gains much more depth. It builds on a story that started in season 2 where Kevin starts developing feelings for Gina, and he spends much of season 3 trying to win her over, despite her obsessive love for Dusty. And for a while, Gina shows no interest. She even brushes him off a few times. But eventually, she does get some insight into Kevin's world, and she finds out that she likes it. She also learns that Kevin is ready and willing to go out of his way for her. And that's something Dusty never did. It's something her own family never did. That really leaves an impact, and one that makes the last few episodes of season 3 oddly dramatic. Now, there are still plenty of obscene jokes along the way, some that involve blood, poop, and large hanging dicks, but there is an effort to add a little sentimentality, more so than we ever got in Brickleberry, and more so than we've gotten from South Park in a long time. Now, it would be easy to write off Paradise PD as a show full of shallow toilet humor, and anyone who's watched Brickleberry can be forgiven for thinking that way. But as the show has progressed, it does offer insights beyond your typical poop joke. Now, it never gets too deep. This is not BoJack Horseman or Rick and Morty we're talking about, but it never tries to be those shows either. In fact, Paradise PD even pokes fun at both shows and their convoluted plots and philosophies. In doing so, it shows that overarching themes don't have to be too complex. They just have to be simple, blunt, and maybe a little gross to get the point across. But if there is a larger message in Paradise PD, it's this. Put a bunch of depraved people in a depraved world, and you're bound to get more depravity. You can't put twisted characters like Kevin, Randall, Fitz, Gina, or Dusty in this world and expect them to mellow out. They're going to get worse. There's just no way around it. On top of that, nobody in the world of Paradise PD takes responsibility for anything. Whether it involves lying about who's the father of a half-dolphin, half-dog kid, or who sold heroin to make fried chicken, or who hid out in a blimp city with Bill Clinton to avoid his pregnant wife. Taking responsibility is the last of last resorts, and it's often what escalates the gratuitous antics throughout the show. And even when the characters make good decisions, they have no incentive to be less depraved. Nobody's going out of their way to help or encourage them. In a place like Paradise, a community full of hookers, drug addicts, and dolphin fuckers, you're only ever going to be surrounded by bad influences. But, and this is where some of the drama comes in, those influences don't have to define you. The latter episodes of Season 3 really built on this. In subplots with Randall, Gina, Kevin, Fitz, and Bullet, these characters show a rare level of agency. When Fitz finally confronts Bullet about who fathered his son, he revealed that he's not an idiot. He knew the truth. How he dealt with it, though, that was his choice. And for once, Bullet sees someone do something other than go on a revenge-fueled rampage. Even for a hardened drug addict, it makes quite an impression. And Randall, for all his loudmouth whining, reveals that he really does want to be a better father. When he finds out Karen is pregnant, he shows a real commitment to doing better for this kid than he did with Kevin. He's still an asshole to his wife and his mother-in-law, but his desire to do better with his second child, a child he never thought he could have due to losing his nuts, is something we can still respect. But it's Kevin and Gina's story that garners the most drama. Season 3 culminates with them trying to be together despite their many proclivities. It all comes to a head when Gina takes a chance at removing the bullet that causes her so many issues, including her insatiable lust for fat men. Even though it's risky, she takes that chance. And finally, the source of so much anger and depravity for her is gone. She can now be with Kevin, and she frames it as choosing to be happy. It's a happiness that Kevin genuinely wants to share. And for a brief moment, it looks like they will. But sadly, it's just not meant to be. In order to save their friends and families from all the people they've hurt over the course of 3 seasons, namely the celebrities they've insulted, Gina has to become that violent rage monster once more. And Kevin has to lose the only person he's ever loved. It's bloody and destructive, but it's also heartbreaking on some levels. It's the kind of plot we never got in several seasons of Brickleberry. And it gives some much needed heart to the show. Even atop a foundation of dick and poop jokes, it still has an impact. And for a show like Paradise PD, a show built on a foundation of gratuitous violence, sex, and toilet humor, that's oddly refreshing. We all need to laugh and gag a little at times. It's good for us. And a little sentiment in that depraved world goes a long way, especially in a place like Paradise. I'll say it again. Paradise PD is a raunchy, obscene show, and it is not for kids. It's not for many adults either. That's worth belaboring. If you are at all easily offended or exceedingly squeamish, you probably won't make it past the first episode of this show. And you probably won't appreciate the dirty humor that this show so gleefully channels. But if you have a dirty sense of humor, Paradise PD is like an extra shot of hard liquor laced with cocaine. Nothing is bleeped, nothing is censored. You'll see and hear things on the show that would never make it onto network TV. But that's part of what makes it so much fun. It's unapologetically crude. It knows what it is and doesn't pretend to be anything else. But, unlike Brickleberry, it makes an effort to tell a larger story. It explores a depraved world full of depraved people, and it pulls no punches when it comes to mocking celebrities, exploring hot-button political issues, or bashing Tucker Carlson. It doesn't try to be smart about it, as South Park often does. It just tries to have fun with it and in the most obscene way possible. It still has its share of flaws. The crude humor doesn't always land, and some bits are too ridiculous even by adult animation standards. Seriously, at one point an anal polyp gains sentience. It shows just how far the show is willing to go to cross lines and push the envelope. Make no mistake, you will be disgusted and offended more than once. But Paradise PD tries to make sure you still have fun along the way. For that, it's one of those rare shows that, if you can appreciate the humor, you'll get much more out of it than you expect. Just don't watch certain episodes on a full stomach. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Take care and stay safe. And please, don't fuck dolphins or do meth.